The first thing I heard on Christmas Eve was not bells or carols. It was a little girl under a broken streetlight on Archer Avenue. Whispering through the snow, they said my daddy has to die before midnight. I almost drove past her. My fingers were stiff around the wheel, and the back seat was packed with paper gift bags for families from my school who had asked us not to make charity obvious. I was 27, a fifth grade teacher at St. Anne's, and all week I had told my students Christmas meant helping. Then a shivering child appeared at 10:43 p.m., and every sensible part of me said to keep driving. But she looked up at me like fear had already become familiar. She could not have been more than 6. Her red coat was too thin for Chicago winter. Her white tights were soaked at the knees, and one silver shoe was missing. In her arms, she held a cracked music box shaped like a tiny church. I slowed before I had made the decision. The tires crunched against the curb, and for 1 second, I stayed inside with the heater blowing weak air against my gloves. Then I grabbed my phone and stepped out. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, using the careful voice I used with frightened students. "Are you lost?" She shook her head once, a tiny movement that answered nothing. "Where are your parents?" Her fingers tightened around the music box until the little gold cross bent sideways. They took me from the church. I looked up and down the street, empty storefronts, snow-covered cars. A laundromat sign blinked red and blue, no adults, no open doors. No one shouting a child's name. "What's your name?" Her lips trembled. "Ivy." "Okay, Ivy, I'm Nora Bennett. I'm a teacher. I'm going to get you warm. And then we'll call someone safe." The word safe made her eyes fill. That scared me more than if she had screamed. I helped her into the car, wrapped my spare scarf around her shoulders, and turned the heater as high as it would go. I offered her a candy cane from one of the gift bags. She did not take it. She only stared through the windshield at the snow. "He told me not to trust anyone," she said. "Who did?" "Daddy." I dialed 911. But before the call connected, Ivy grabbed my sleeve. "No police," she whispered. "Please," the bad man said, "if I called the police, Daddy wouldn't make it to Christmas." I knew children repeated things wrong sometimes. I also knew when a child was repeating words she did not understand but would never forget. I ended the call before it rang through. Not because I believed everything, but because I needed a moment to think. I got maybe 10 seconds. Headlights appeared behind us, not one pair. 3 black SUVs came out of the snow like they had been waiting for my mistake. One stopped behind my car, one pulled in front. The third angled across the street, blocking the lane. Ivy made a small sound and slid lower in the seat. The front SUV opened, and a tall man stepped out in a dark overcoat, snow catching in his black hair. He did not hurry, he did not shout. Men around him moved before he said a word, as if his silence was already in order. Then his eyes found Ivy through my windshield. Something fierce crossed his face and vanished. He came to my window and tapped once on the glass. I lowered it 2 inches with a hand I wished would stop shaking. His voice was low, controlled, and colder than the air between us. "Step away from my daughter." The man outside had not raised his voice, but everything about him made the street feel smaller. The light cut across his face, showing pale skin, sharp cheekbones, and eyes so dark they looked almost black behind the half-lowered glass. He was maybe in his late 30s, but he carried himself like someone who had stopped asking permission from the world. "Your daughter?" I repeated, because I needed one normal word to hold on to. Ivy made a sound beside me, not relief, not fear. Something caught between the two. The man's gaze shifted to her, and the hard line of his face cracked for half a second. "Ivy," he said, quieter now. "Look at me." She peeked over the edge of my scarf. "Daddy." That should have made me relax. It did not. His men had surrounded my car without touching it. 2 of them were scanning windows and rooftops instead of looking at me. The front SUV had trapped my Ford against the curb. "Then back up and let me call the police," I said. My voice shook, but it stayed clear. "No, excuse me, you will not make that call." My thumb moved toward the phone in the cup holder. The screen had gone black. I found a child alone in the snow. She said she was taken from a church. She said someone threatened her father. "I'm a teacher. I'm a mandated reporter. I'm not handing her over to a stranger in a black SUV because he says so." One of his men glanced at him, waiting. The man did not look away from me. He studied me, and somehow that was worse than anger. "Name," he said. "Hers or mine? Yours, Nora Bennett, school teacher." It was not a question. My mouth went dry. How do you know that? Gift bags in the back seat, St. Anne's labels. Staff badge on your coat. I glanced down. My badge was still clipped near my scarf. Then you can read enough to know I'm not a threat. Threats do not always know what they are. Ivy flinched. I saw it. So did he. His jaw tightened. He reached for the door handle, and I hit the lock before his fingers touched it. The click sounded small and ridiculous, but it was the only power I had. His hand stopped in midair. Slowly he looked at me through the glass. Miss Bennett, do not open my door. My daughter is in your car, and she is warm, breathing, and scared. Until I understand what is happening, she stays where she is. The quiet that followed made the heater sound painfully loud. A man near the rear SUV touched his earpiece and murmured something. The man at my window lifted one finger, and the murmuring stopped. That was when I understood he was not just Ivy's father. He was the center of whatever had surrounded us. My name is Adrian Voss, he said, and the person who put my daughter on this road wanted me to find her with you. My throat tightened. Why would anyone do that? Adrian looked past me toward the emptied buildings behind my car. His face, not fear, recognition. Then his hand struck the roof once, sharp enough to make me jump. Down, he said. Both of you now. What? His eyes locked on my Nora. Get below the windows. Ivy grabbed my arm and pulled. I bent toward her just as a red dot slid across the fogged windshield and stopped on the empty space where my head had been. Adrian moved before I understood what I had seen. 1 second he was outside my window. The next he had turned toward his men and snapped an order that cut through the storm. I did not know the words, but I understood what they did. The street changed at once. Doors opened. Engines growled. Men shifted into positions so practiced it felt like the whole block had been rehearsed. Before I ever arrived, Ivy pressed against my side, both hands caught in my coat, and I folded one arm around her shoulders while bracing the other against the dashboard. Don't look up, I whispered, though I was not sure which one of us needed to hear it more. The red dot was gone, but the space where it had touched the windshield seemed brighter than the rest of the glass. My phone slid from the cup holder and landed by my boot, the screen black. I had spent the whole day delivering other people's Christmas miracles, and the one thing that could call for help had died in my car. Adrian appeared at my door again. His face was calm, but his eyes were busy, measuring the windows, the rooftops, the street, the distance between my Ford and his SUV. Unlock the door, he said. No. It came out before I could soften it. His jaw tightened. Nora, this is not a discussion. You said someone wanted you to find her with me. That means I'm part of whatever this is now, and I'm not climbing out because you ordered me to. For the first time, surprise crossed his face. Not anger, not admiration. Just surprise, as if people did not often say inconvenient things to him. You are in danger because you stopped. I looked down at Ivy's wet tights and the way her little knees were shaking under my scarf. Maybe, I said, but I would stop again. Ivy went very still. Adrian heard the words too. The church bell nearby began to ring 11, each note heavy under the snow. Midnight was 1 hour away. My car is armored, Adrian said. Yours is not. I need both of you inside it, then take Ivy. His eyes sharpened. And leave you here. I'm not your responsibility. Tonight you are. He said it like a decision that had already been made, not with tenderness, but with a kind of hard certainty that unsettled me more than kindness would have. Before I could answer, a sharp crack cut through the air. It was not the loud movie sound I expected. It was smaller, cleaner, and much worse. The passenger window jumped in its frame, and a white burst spread through the glass beside Ivy's face. She screamed. I covered her with both arms as candy canes spilled across the floor, and the heater kept rattling like nothing had changed. Adrian pulled my door open from outside so quickly the lock might as well have given up. Cold air rushed in. Move, this time I did, because the glass near Ivy had turned into a spiderweb and the danger outside was no longer something I could reason with. He lifted Ivy first. She reached for him with a sob, and his expression broke for half a breath as he held her against his coat. Then he put her into the back of the black SUV and turned for me. I stumbled out, my boots sliding on the icy curb. His hand caught my elbow, firm but careful, and I hated that I noticed the difference. Stay low, he said. My car, I said, because shock makes people stupid. Forget the car. My students' gifts are in there. For 1 second, he looked at me as if I had handed him a problem from a world he had never learned how to enter. Then his face hardened. I'll replace every gift. Get in. We crossed 3 feet of snow that felt impossibly wide. Wind shoved hair into my eyes. Men spoke into radios. Tires ground against salt. Somewhere far off, I thought I heard a siren. Or maybe I only wanted to. The SUV door shut behind me with a heavy sealed sound. The warmth inside was almost insulting. Ivy was wrapped in a dark wool blanket, still clutching the cracked music box to her chest. The leather seat smelled faintly of cedar, snow, and expensive coffee. Then every lock clicked at once. I grabbed the hand. It did not move through the tinted window. Adrian stood outside with one hand on the roof, looking directly at me. "Open the door," I shouted, though I knew he could barely hear. He did not open it. He leaned closer, speaking slowly enough for me to read his lips. "Stay down." Then he stepped away from the car and placed himself between the window and the dark buildings across the street. That was when the meaning of the lock changed. He had not locked me in with him. He had locked the danger out. The driver climbed in a moment later, a broad gray-haired man with a calm face, hands that did not tremble. "Miss Bennett," he said without turning around, "please stay below the window line. Let me out." My voice sounded thinner than I wanted. "Sir said no. Sir doesn't get to decide that." He glanced at me in the mirror and his eyes were almost kind. "Tonight he does." The SUV pulled away before I could argue. I looked through the rear glass, searching for Adrian. And for half a second I thought they were leaving him in the street. Another SUV slid between us and the snow, blocking my view. Ivy whispered, "Daddy," so softly it hurt. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Somewhere safe," the driver said. "That is not an answer. It is the only one I can give you." Chicago passed in broken pieces behind the dark glass. Closed bakeries. Apartment windows with blue television light flickering behind curtains. A gas station clerk staring at a small screen behind bulletproof glass. Christmas lights blinked from balconies like they belonged to another city. One where teachers finished their deliveries and went home. I held Ivy closer. "Can you tell me what happened at the church?" She stared down at the music box. The little church door on the front had cracked open and a painted angel hung sideways from a wire. "We were lighting candles," she whispered. "Mrs. Bell said Daddy was late." "Who is Mrs. Bell?" "My nanny. She told me to wait near the side room. Then a man came and said he worked for Daddy." I kept my voice even. "Did you know him?" Ivy shook her head. "He had nice gloves." That detail nearly undid me. Children remembered strange things when fear was too big to hold. Nice gloves, one missing shoe, a threat before midnight. "He gave me the box," she said. "He told me if I ran to the road, someone good would stop. He said Daddy always notices good people too late." The driver's hands tightened on the wheel. He had heard every word. "What's your name?" I asked him. "Thomas." "Thomas, you need to call the police." "Calls are being made." "That is not the same thing." His eyes met mine in the mirror. "I know." Before I could push harder, the convoy turned off the main road and climbed a private drive lined with bare trees and low stone walls. At the top stood a house too large to feel like a home, with dark windows and warm light hidden behind heavy curtains. The gates closed behind us without a sound. When the locks finally clicked open, I should have been relieved. Instead, I froze with my hand on the handle, because Adrian was already waiting on the steps, snow melting in his hair, his face carved out of something older than anger. His eyes went to Ivy first, then to me. "Inside," he said. "Now." I stepped out with Ivy in my arms, and only then did I see the thing tucked beneath the red ribbon of the cracked music box. It was a folded note, cream-colored and clean despite the snow, pressed so neatly against the broken church that it looked placed there with care. Across the front, in black ink, was the address of St. Anne's Elementary, my school, my classroom, my life, written in a stranger's hand. The note looked too small to change anything. A folded square of cream paper under the ribbon of Ivy's broken music box, with my school's address written across it. But when I saw St. Anne's Elementary, the cold inside me became sharper than the weather. Adrian took the note with the kind of control that made everyone go still. "Who gave this to her?" Ivy whispered. "The man with nice gloves." Adrian looked down at his daughter, and the hardness in him softened just enough to hurt. "You're safe now, little star." When she reached for him, He held her like a man trying not to imagine how close he had come to losing her. Inside the house, warmth poured over us with the smell of pine and cinnamon. A Christmas tree glowed near the staircase. Beautiful in a way that felt wrong after the street, Mrs. Bell rushed forward, gray hair pinned badly from panic. I only turned away for a minute. She was beside me. Adrian did not shout. He asked who had access to the side room, and she named staff, volunteers, church security, Father Owen, and the choir director. I stood dripping snow on marble floors and said, I need to call my mother. I need my phone charged. And I need the police involved because someone used my school. Adrian watched me. You give orders like you expect them to work. I teach 5th grade, I said. Your hallway isn't the worst room I've survived. He told Thomas to bring me a landline. Thomas warned that outside lines might not be safe, but Adrian's answer was final. She calls her mother. In the study, I told my mother I was okay, which was not true, and warned her to lock her door. Before I could explain, Adrian entered with a note open in his hand. On the inside was my full name, my mother's address, and one sentence beneath both. Midnight chooses which woman he saves. My mother was still saying my name when Adrian ended the call. I turned on him. Turn it back on. Your mother is being moved as we speak. By strangers in black coats on Christmas Eve, my voice rose. She is 72 and has a heart condition. Consent is not consent if you scare her first. The hallway went quiet. Adrian looked at me for a long moment, then said, You're right. He had Thomas reconnect the call and made his team wait outside my mother's building until she heard my voice and approved the names. When Thomas confirmed she was leaving safely, my knees weakened, but I raised a hand before Adrian could step closer. I need answers, not orders. He laid the note on the desk. Someone inside my organization helped take Ivy. They knew her routine, the church schedule, your school route, and your mother. Why me? Because you would stop. And if I believed you were part of it, I would waste the hour punishing the wrong person. Before I could answer, Thomas's phone buzzed. St. Anne's just called emergency services. The donation boxes in your classroom were open. One had another music box inside. My classroom should have been dark and empty except for paper stars taped to the windows and 26 desks with names I had written in September. Thomas showed Adrian a grainy photo and I demanded to see it. There it was on my desk, a tiny white church music box with a cracked steeple, surrounded by the gift bags my students had decorated. One tag read for Mateo, size 7 gloves. They're using places you care about, Adrian said. They want you emotional. It's working. I started toward the door, but Thomas blocked me. You cannot go to the school, that's my classroom. Adrian's voice came from behind me, and it may be a second trap. I turned on him. Stop saying letting like I belong to you. Before he answered, Ivy appeared near the Christmas tree, clutching the broken music box. Is your school in trouble because of me? I knelt in front of her. No, sweetheart, none of this is because of you. The man said good people pay for helping. I held her carefully. Then he was wrong. Mrs. Bell suddenly went pale. I know the man with the nice gloves. She described brown leather gloves lined with gray wool, a volunteer badge, and a man speaking with Patrick near the West Hall. Patrick Doyle? Adrian's face did not change, and that was how I knew the name hurt. Patrick had access to the church schedule, the school donations, and the family residence list. He chose me because my students were already part of the route, I said. Thomas checked his phone. Patrick's was off, his apartment empty. His vehicle last seen to south, towards St. Anne's, I said. Adrian looked at me. You do not leave my sight, and you do not make me feel like a prisoner. After one slow breath, he said, agreed. At 11:37, room 214 looked nothing like the place where I kept extra pencils in a coffee mug and taught children to revise messy sentences. The hallway smelled of wax, old crayons, and December pine garland. My classroom door stood open 3 inches, a thin line of light spilling across the floor. From inside came the uneven melody of a music box. Adrian moved first, not rushing. He listened. I pointed to the narrow window beside the door. In the reflection, I saw my desk, the donation boxes, and a man near the back shelves with his face half hidden by a scarf. Brown leather gloves. Patrick Doyle looked ordinary, which made him worse. You brought her, Patrick said without turning around. Good. I wondered if you had learned anything tonight. Adrian opened the door. I stayed half a step behind him, but I did not hide. Miss Bennett, the good woman on the route. You used a child, I said. You used my students, I used predictability. Good people stop, guilt men chase. Adrian's voice was low. Why? Patrick looked at him with old bitterness. Because you forgot what your family was built on. You started protecting children, funding clinics, paying teachers, saving neighborhoods that used to fear your name. You became weak. Adrian stepped forward and I touched his arm. Patrick smiled. There it is, she makes you hesitate too. I moved beside Adrian. No, she makes him choose. The music box slowed on my desk. Adrian looked at the paper stars on the windows, then at Patrick. Thomas, he said, call the police. Give them everything. The church footage, the school footage, the notes, all of it. Patrick's smile vanished. You would hand family business to outsiders? Adrian looked almost tired. You made it children's business. The music box stopped. Then sirens rose through the snow. By the time officers entered the hallway, Adrian had stepped back with his hands visible, letting the law cross a line his world had always kept closed. Before dawn, after statements, questions, and my mother's trembling call from a safe apartment, Adrian drove me back to his house. Ivy was asleep on the couch with the music box in her lap, rewound again and again by Mrs. Bell. Adrian stood beside the Christ tree, looking less like a man who controlled the night and more like someone who had barely survived it. I locked you in my car because I thought protection control, he said. Tonight you proved it means choice. I looked at Ivy, at the pale morning snow on the O's, and at the man who had chosen mercy in a classroom full of paper stars. Then remember that, I said, especially when it's hard. He nodded once. That Christmas did not make him good. One night cannot do that, but it gave him a door, and for once, Adrian Voss opened it instead of locking it.